It. Pennywise the Dancing Clown explained. Coulrophobia is what we call an irrational fear of clowns. But after seeing the movie, I don't think any of us would classify it as irrational. Today on Horror Movies Explained, we are talking about Pennywise the Dancing Clown, also known as It.
Nightmare you ever had. I am your worst dream come true. I'm everything you ever were afraid of.
From telekinesis to shapeshifting, we are going to be exploring all of this clown's favorite party tricks. Pennywise the Dancing Clown is anything but a fun guest at a birthday party. He is not even a real clown. As the Losers Club eventually learns in It Chapter 2, Pennywise is an ancient, evil being that is possibly as old as the universe itself. It comes from the space beyond the space, also known as the Macroverse. In the Pennywise the Clown origin story, Pennywise leaves the Macroverse and enters our universe. It crashed into Earth millions of years before we would come to be. He landed in what would later become North America, more specifically Derry, Maine, where the story takes place. It slept in the crater that was created with his cataclysmic entrance to Earth, and it would soon become his lair. Pennywise awoke in 1715, when the town of Derry was created, and began its cycle of feeding on the fears of Derry's citizens before going back to its hibernation, which would usually last about 27 years. When it does feed, though, it feeds on fear, and we know that he mainly feeds from children.
Beautiful fear.
Well, why is that? Children are easily manipulated and easily scared. Their fears are easy to manifest into physical forms to be harvested by it. Children are also the least likely to be believed if they were to report being stalked by a creepy clown. Pennywise doesn't always have to wait the full 27 years to awaken, though. In the beginning of Stephen King's novel, a boy is beaten to death by his stepfather in 1957, and this act of violence awakens the horrifying entity. It both creates and consumes violence. It does this through many of its supernatural powers, one of them being the power to create and cast illusions, or manifest very real threats like the fire that killed Mike's parents. It also can project itself into photos, shown in the iconic slideshow scene taking place in Billy's garage. As they flip through the photographs of Billy's family, Pennywise inserts himself in to further terrify the boys. His most lethal power is the ability to manipulate the minds of the people in Derry, like how he manipulates the minds of the adults in the town, causing them not to dwell on the sling of killings that happened in their town every 27 years. We see this in the film when adults are posting new missing children posters right over the old ones, not being able to see this as anything other than an isolated incident. This power is a great gaslighting tool, as seen in the scene when Beverly and the entire bathroom is covered in her blood after a vicious attack by, you guessed it. Her family cannot see any of the blood and cannot help her. Not that he was the particularly helpful type to begin with.
The blood, it's...
What blood?
Another of his powers is demonstrated when the gang finds Pennywise's lair through sewer tunnels. Floating about them are the bodies of all of its victims, showing us that he has the power of telekinesis, as if he wasn't scary enough. Though he may seem indestructible, shown through his regenerating after receiving a huge spear to the dome, the gang finds that he does become more vulnerable as their fear in him begins to fade, eventually leading him to retreat back into his hole and slip back into his slumber, gaining his strength to come back for another 27 years or so, just in time for the sequel. But what is its true form? We know that it has the ability to shapeshift, taking the form of what each of its victims fears most. In the novel, it transforms into many more shapes than what we get to see in the movies, like a giant spider, and many more famous characters that we might recognize. Dracul, the shark from Jaws, and Frankenstein's monster, to name a few. But due to copyright issues, they didn't make their way into the movie. But that left a lot of creativity to the production to create new terrifying fears that come to terrorize the kids and us. But its true form, known as the Deadlights, cannot even be fully comprehended by human beings. though the sight of them is a little less devastating to the victim's psyche in the movies versus the books. In the first film, we see Beverly Marsh nearly escape with her life after catching a glimpse of them, and it is said to drive people insane. Though her sanity remains intact, she is forced to endure terrifying visions for the rest of her life. This is the power that allows him to put his victims into a catatonic state before suspending them in the air like creepy decorations in his lair. In Stephen King's novel, the character Billy recalls seeing the deadlights as well, and describes them as an endless, crawling, hairy creature made of orange light. You think that sounds bizarre? Just wait for this. Equally as weird, but less fear-inducing, is its mortal enemy, Maturin, a giant turtle that created our universe. Yep, we're confused too. Now, if you've never read the novel, then this comes with a lot less context. Not that knowing the context makes it any less bizarre. Maturin, by nature, is a kind and benevolent creature, rarely even peeks out from his shell. In the books, he has a bigger role to play, eventually helping Bill and giving him the advice he needs to defeat Pennywise once and for all. In the movies, though, he doesn't play a role. He is simply alluded to by his use of statues, stickers, and toys. While Pennywise is obviously a fictional character, he is inspired by some real-life instances, like John Wayne Gacy, a serial killer who often dressed as a clown killed about 33 young men in the 60s and 70s. King also said that he drew inspiration from the physical appearance of Ronald McDonald. Now it makes sense why McDonald's has phased the guy out. No matter what age you are, an adult man with a creepy red smile plastered on his face over a layer of often cakey white makeup won't be at the top of your birthday invite list. They say that 1 in 10 adults have a fear of clowns. Many attribute this fear to Stephen King's first novel, though the movies certainly aren't lowering those numbers. Though Pennywise is able to ultimately be defeated, it takes a brave few who are able to overcome their fears enough to finish the job. Thanks for watching Horror Movies Explained. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to come back to our own underground lair of horror.